Sumerians, Babylonians, the birth of man. Pyramids rising in the Egyptian sands. Pharaohs and gods, the empire expands. Priests with his fingers, democracy spark. Olympians ruling from Mount Olympus's ark. Rome, the mighty empire built to last. Legions marching from the past. The Silk Road trade routes, cultures blend. History's tapestry from beginning to end. From conquerors to thinkers, builders, and more. Every civilization added to the law. So let's honor the past, learn from its view. Cause history's lessons, they're forever true. Come, just say it.
And let's take a trip back in time. Ancient lands where history shines. Mesopotamia, the writing began. Sumerians, Babylonians, birth of man. Pyramids rising in the Egyptian sands. Thousand gods, the empire expands. Priests with thinkers, democracy spark. Olympians ruling from Mount Olympus. Rome, the mighty empire, built to last. Legions marching from the past. The Silk Road, trade routes, cultures blend.
History's tapestry from beginning to end. From conquerors to thinkers, builders, and more. Every civilization added to the law. So let's honor the past, learn from its view. Cause history's lessons, they're forever true. Come, let's take a trip back in time to ancient lands where history shines. Mesopotamia.
All right, what's up? Let me put myself on here real quick. So the book that I'm going to be going over today is The Hidden History of the Human Race, Forbidden Archaeology by Michael Cremo and Richard L. Thompson. Richard L. Thompson passed away, and I had the privilege to speak to Michael A. Kramer, which I have a post on my Twitter account and a link. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it on YouTube. But there's a video with me and Michael Kramer talking about some of the things that I found interesting in his book. And like I said, every book that I own, I put all these big old luxury tabs on my book, right? And what I like to do is every day I like to go back to one of the books that I've tabbed up, like this one, and the ones that I've done in the last videos, and highlight everything so that way I can reread what I found interesting. And I do that so that way I can just basically refresh my memory and remembering things and where I've learned it at and stuff like that. So that's why you'll always hear me just share what I've read, and I know where to find it at least, because I have many ways of looking for the information. Now, unfortunately, sometimes I notice that I'll close this book and I'll open my bookshelf and I'll have a tab or two missing. So sometimes I do lose information, just like everybody. So that's why I also go back and read every book that I personally own more than 3 times. So every book that I own, and I have a section on my website of every book that I personally own on there. And it's continuously being updated, of course. And what I like to do is just keep, like I said, just keep trying to go back and get everything. So one of the first things that Michael Kramer and Richard L. Thompson talk about in this book that I found interesting was that the knowledge of modern humans going back millions of years, and the basis of it is on a set of footprints that's called the Laetoli footprints. I believe that's how you say it, but it's Laetoli. So when I hear the discussions about, humans going back millions of years and people ask for evidence, I mean, I have something that shows that, right? I'm going off of what is shared. Then the next thing they talk about, and this is in the introduction and acknowledgement, so I didn't even get to the juicy part yet. But he writes in here about the Eolithic industries and how, for example, in the 1950s, Louis Leakey found stone tools over 200,000 years ago, 2,000 years old in Southern California. So that's interesting to me because the oldest Homo sapien bones that we know of on planet Earth that has been traced by science goes back 300,000 years ago, and it goes to it's found in Morocco, Africa. Then the oldest Homo sapien bones, from what I understand, goes back 200,000 years ago and can be found in, I believe it's in Ethiopia, Africa. I'm pretty sure I have it marked in here, so I'll go over it eventually. But just to know that they found stone tools over 200,000 years that are 200,000 years old in Southern California gives me an idea that I need to know more about what they're talking about, because he also talks about how humans did not enter the subarctic regions of the New World until about 12,000 years ago, and I'll get into what he means about that and what I've learned from him personally from asking him. So that's pretty interesting. And then they talk about the arrowheads and bolas, and they're usually how they're the work of Homo sapiens sapiens, because I guess the intelligence that's needed to use those. But I mean, there's arguments of these things going back much older than what is considered Homo sapiens sapiens. And of course, I'll get into that. So let me get to. All right. So this is pretty funny because after that, he talks about how Darwin published the book, The Origins of Species, in 1859. Now, I'm actually rereading it right now. And over that, and that's a pretty interesting book that I'll go over in the future too. But he says in here, to suppose that humans were anything other than the modified descendants of ancestral line of ape-like creatures. So basically, if you read Darwin's books, then you'll understand how he came up to his theory. He's not saying that, matter of fact, I'm not even going to jump into that. I'm just going to say he talks about Darwin in here. So what's important to me about this is that based off of what we know about evolution, there's always going to be a mention of Darwin. So at least as the person that is having an argument should at least read the books, right? Read it, and not just one, because I'm supposed to have, I think, like 3 or 4 other ones, because he revised some of his books. So you have to go back and read the revised, because some people will say, oh, Darwin said this and blah, blah, and don't even realize that, you got to read the other ones where he might have said, yeah, you know what, I might have been wrong in this one, and this is why. So he actually explains. So to me, it's pretty cool. Here we go. Like right here, he says, by the time Darwin published The Origins of Species in 1859, some key finds relevant to human origins had already been made, which is true because Darwin gives credit to a lot of people. So this right here, he's not saying, hey, I'm the master of all this. This is, believe me. He's saying, hey, I've read, researched everything that I could, and did my boots on ground on that, on trying to figure out what species belong to what and blah, blah, blah. Darwin actually, read other people's information and talked to them. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see. Okay, so it talks about Neanderthals. And I'll read it and I quote it. It says, in the latter part of the 7th century, a minor German religious poet and composer named Joachim Neumann sometimes wandered through the Dussel River Valley in solitary communion with nature. He used the pseudonym Neander, and after his death, the local people called the valley the Neanderthal. So that's what I learned, and it goes into more about it. And I found that interesting because now I understand the origins of Neanderthals. And this is all should be common knowledge, right? Like, this is not something that needs to be argued. I just find it interesting that when I have discussions with people or hear people talking in spaces or, a clubhouse or whatever it is, and they having that argument about Neanderthals, I'll jump in there and say, hey, can anybody tell me where the name possibly came from? And everybody would be like, what the fuck does that got to do with anything? And I'm just like, because at least to me. And they talk about in the next part that Neanderthals are an offshoot from the main line of human evolution. This is what I found interesting because, there's always people who say, Homo sapiens, and then some people say Neanderthals. Well, here I learned that Neanderthals are sometimes designated Homo sapiens Neanderthalensis. I guess I said that right. If I butchered it, I butchered it. But what I'm trying to basically say is that, man, is that they got the word Homo sapiens in there and basically the Neanderthal verbiage in there. So, trying to argue about what is modern human, well, I think that's kind of a hard thing to do, especially if you got, all that in one place. And I found that very interesting. So, uh, something that I learned reading from this book was that there was there was actually a group that was called Homo stupidus, and I spelled that STUPIDUS. So Homo stupidus, and it was from a guy that he gives credit to. He says Haeckel was one of the first to compose the familiar phylogenetic tree, showing different groups of living beings related to each other, like branches and limbs coming from a central trunk. So, he talks about the Homo sapiens, and then his immediate predecessor was Homo stupidus, is what he says, and then what in quotes he puts it in is true but ignorant man. So I just found that interesting. I mean, I've never heard that. I went to when I first read this, and I went to Google, because everybody always go say do your own research. So I went to do my research. So I typed in Homo stupidus in there, and I couldn't find anything on there. Then I had to type in Haeckel's name, Haeckel. I had to type in his name, and then put in Homo stupidus in there, and that's when I got more information. But let me see what the dude's first name is, because he only calls him. Okay, it's okay. So this dude's name is he's a German anatomist, Ernest Haeckel. So it's ERNSTHAECKEL. Okay, so we got a group of individuals called Homo stupidus. There you go. Let's see. Okay, so this is what I found interesting, very, very interesting, because there's always an argument about where the humans come from, and is the out of Africa theory true or false? Blah 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 blah. Well, maybe this was be where most people who have this question should look into, especially if they haven't read the book, because, like I said, how can you say somebody's wrong if you haven't read the information? Maybe they said something and then later on in the book they retract it, because I'm actually writing my first book, and I'm telling you, it's hard to write a book because I'm trying to remember everything that I'm putting in, and I'm glad that my website, which you can see scrolling on through rebirthoftheword.com, I'm actually that's the beginning of how I came to writing my book. But anyway, so in this part they say, and I want to quote. In his book, The Antiquity of Man, first published in 1863, Charles Lyell, like Huxley and Haeckel, expressed the belief that fossils of a creature intermediate between the apes and humans will someday be found. So they're basically saying, if you read Charles Darwin's book and these individuals' information and books and stuff, you understand that they're saying that that there's going to eventually be some kind of evidence that they can prove that apes and humans, or at least I understand that, have some kind of connection. That future evidence is going to tell us one way or another, right? There's going to be no argument once that is presented 100%. But they go into that the most likely places were the countries of the anthropomorphous apes, the tropical regions of Africa, and the islands of Borneo and Sumatra, Sumatra. And it says Lyell, 1863, page 498. So they give you evidence on that. And it's just making it, to me, maybe that's where we need to start at, on certain things. And the next thing they talk about is the origins basically of humans and where did it begin, basically. And he talks about Darwin. I mean, he says Darwin speaks, and he gets into the idea that maybe if you have a question, maybe you should actually read all the books that he has, so that way you can see why he came up to the conclusions that he came up to, or the ideas at least, right? Because saying somebody's wrong without actually reading that person material and going off what somebody said, if you believe somebody over the person that actually said it, then I think there's something wrong with that. Like you should at least get the information from the horse's mouth. At least I would, right? Like if somebody says something, I want to know if they said it, right? And if somebody says, hey, Rebirth said this, I want you to be able to I want you to be able to back that up. Just don't say that I said that, right? Like, don't put words in my mouth that I didn't say, basically. But okay, so it talks about how the Earth came to be, which is about, they give a date of 4.6 billion. I've read anywhere from 4.3 to 4.6. So that's about the average of the formation of the solar system. And then the earliest, hold on, let me say that again. About 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth came into being as part of the formation of the solar system, right? And then they got that the earliest evidence of life are fossils reputed to the single-celled organisms, which I'm actually doing an article on, is single-celled organisms, and writing a chapter on that. And they say that these dates back to about 3.5 million years. And then, it goes into how long they inhabited land, the earth and stuff like that. But for just to know that they're trying to go back to the earliest time is interesting to me. You know what I mean? So let me do something real quick, y'all. All right, yo, I'm back. I'm actually going to close this down because I'm going to do a part 2 later. All right, I catch y'all later. Thanks for joining.